Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we take a monumental stack of sources, articles, and expert notes and boil it down to the essential nuggets you need to be perfectly well-informed fast.
And today we're really embarking on quite a fascinating journey. We're looking at the intersection of history, high finance, and reality television.
Yeah, our destination is the world-famous gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas.
That's the one.
So our mission today is a deep analysis, really, of this whole world of high-stakes pawn commerce. We're centering it squarely on the Pawn Stars phenomena.
Right. And we're not just, recapping episodes. That's not the goal here.
No, we want to dissect the core mechanics. How is history actually authenticated? How do they assign value, often under, intense pressure? And what's this surprising business model behind this whole TV empire?
Exactly. This deep dive, it's really designed for you, the learner, if you want those aha moments, those insights into how items go from being like dusty relics maybe found in an attic
Right.
to potentially museum quality investments, and sometimes maybe back down again to just souvenirs.
Right, that happens too. We're looking at the show that basically created a whole new genre, didn't it? It blended that historical inquiry element with just raw retail drama.
It really did. When Pawn Stars premiered, July 19, 2009, it just hit a sweet spot.
Yeah, our sources mentioned it was often described as one part Antiques Roadshow, a pinch of LA Ink,
Right.
and a dash of CoPS, which I think captures it pretty well.
It does. It was a genius formula, really. You had the historical artifacts, the tension of haggling, which people love to watch,
Oh, yeah.
and that genuine interpersonal conflict, mostly among the Harrison family.
And this formula, it didn't just make a successful TV show, it fundamentally changed a small family business.
Absolutely. Richard, the old man, Harrison, and his son, Rick, they opened the Gold and Silver Pawn Shop. It was a 24-hour place back in 1989. And before the cameras showed up, it was, a pretty quiet local operation, maybe averaging, 70 to 100 customers on a busy day, something like that.
But the second it became this global hit, broadcast in over 150 countries, everything changed.
Oh, completely. That customer traffic didn't just increase, it absolutely exploded.
They now see over 11,000 customers daily, which, just think about that from a logistical standpoint if you're trying to run a serious high-value pawn operation.
It's almost unmanageable for the pawn side of things, so to handle that influx, the shop had to undertake this massive expansion.
Yeah, they grew their showroom floor to, 15,000 square feet?
A whopping 15,000 square feet, and they had to hire nearly 30 new employees.
Oh.
But here's the thing, those employees weren't necessarily authenticators. They were mostly needed to handle the tourism traffic, the merchandise sales, the basic customer flow.
Right, managing the crowds. And that expansion leads us to a really key insight for you, the learner, about the business model itself. Because of that constant stream of tourists, cameras everywhere, the main cast, Rick, Corey, Chumley, they actually have very limited interaction with actual pawning customers on the days they're shooting the show.
Exactly. And that's not just, a choice. It's driven by strict confidentiality laws around pawn transactions. Think about it. When someone pawns an item, they might be in financial distress or, in some cases, maybe the item's origin is a bit questionable.
Sure.
The law requires that the identity of pawning customers stays absolutely confidential. It protects their privacy,
Yeah.
and it also helps prevent, the tracking of potentially stolen goods through the system.
Right. So with 1,000 tourists milling around, taking pictures, videos,
The risk of compromising that confidentiality during filming is just way too high. So what happens is they mostly work with a sort of vetted group of sellers who are there specifically for the show.
okay. Pre-screened almost.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Or the main cast works the actual pawn counter only on days when they're not filming.
So it becomes clear pretty quickly the shop functions as two distinct businesses, doesn't it? There's the serious pawn operation happening maybe off camera or on different days.
Right.
And then there's the highly successful tourist attraction and TV set.
Precisely. Two engines running side by side.
Okay, so let's unpack the core challenge of that serious pawn operation, assigning value to the unexpected. And we should start with, I think, a prime example of speculative buying. It really highlights Rick Harrison's willingness to take a chance, even when his initial historical hunch is completely off base.
Yes, this is an excellent case study. It really gets into intrinsic versus assumed value of artifacts. And it shows that sometimes, even a massive failure in identification
Yeah.
can still turn a tidy profit if the underlying material is genuinely old.
Okay, so we're talking about the Lafayette textile.
That's the one.
A guest brings in this piece of fabric, a textile, found in his frugal grandmother's house.
Right. And the family story, the sort of handed down lore, was that this portrait textile was connected to President William Henry Harrison.
Okay, him, the one famous for having the shortest presidency ever, right, died just a month into office, early 1800s.
That's him. Died of a cold, famously. So Rick, his mind always buzzing with early American history.
Mm-hmm.
He's instantly intrigued. Could this be a piece of 1840s presidential campaign memorabilia? That'd be quite a find.
So he calls in an expert.
Right away. He calls Dana, who's the president of Early American History Auctions. Dana takes a look.
Yeah.
Dana initially agrees, yeah, the portrait resembles Harrison, and estimates that if this political textile from that 1840 campaign, if it's genuine, it could be worth somewhere between, say, $300 and $500.
Okay, decent potential. So Rick decides to gamble. He puts down $100 for it.
Yep. Classic Rick move. Low risk, relatively speaking, high potential reward if the full authentication pans out.
But it was a gamble based on a completely wrong premise, right? A William Henry Harrison campaign textile.
Totally wrong. And here's where it gets really interesting for the process.
Okay.
Dana goes back, does the deep dive research, this show is famous for, pores over portraits, historical records, and returns the next day with the plot twist.
Oh.
The man in the portrait, not President William Henry Harrison.
Who was it then?
It was the Marquis de Lafayette.
Wow. Lafayette, the French guy, the hero of the American Revolution, friend of Washington.
The very same. The famous French aristocrat, key supporter, military officer for Washington. I mean, that's a massive difference in historical context.
Huge. We're talking, what, 50 years earlier, roughly? Revolutionary War era versus mid-19th century politics.
Exactly. So the revised history was, okay, this textile, it's a genuine commemorative piece, either from Lafayette's big famous American tour back in the 1820s, or maybe a commemorative piece made shortly after he died in 1834.
But wait, despite this huge case of mistaken identity, mistaking a presidential campaign item for a Revolutionary War figure, what happened to the value?
That's the kicker.
Yeah.
The final revised expert value was still $200 to $300.
No way. So Rick doubled his money anyway.
Doubled his $100, maybe tripled it, based on a completely mistaken premise.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the identity that ended up mattering as much as what? Just the fact that it was old fabric.
Pretty much. It was the intrinsic value of having a rare, genuinely old 19th century textile. Rick's initial quick analysis, just recognizing it was old, that was the most important step. It let him profit purely from the speculative risk he took, regardless of who was actually pictured.
The material itself held the value. That proves his gut instinct for age was key.
Precisely. Okay, so let's pivot now. From 19th century fabric to something that takes us back, well, not just centuries, but millennia.
Okay.
The mastodon tusk. We're really diving into deep time here.
Right. A seller, Robert, I think his name was, brought in a piece of tusk, but it was sliced, right? Not whole.
Yeah, cleanly sliced. Rick noticed that immediately. And the seller explained apparently 3 people found it together and they just divided the asset, cut it up.
Ouch. Rick must have pointed out that kills the value, doesn't it? Collectors want the whole thing.
Oh, yeah, he jumped on that right away. Dramatically decreases the collective value. But what was really crucial about this artifact was its provenance, where it was found.
Right.
Rick noted, okay, mastodons, they were common across North America once. They died out maybe 7,000 to 10,000 years ago. The theory being early humans hunted them out because they're apparently quite docile. But this specific piece, it was marked as coming from Point Barrow, Alaska.
Okay, Point Barrow. Why does that specific location matter? If mastodons were all over, why is Point Barrow a selling point?
See, that's the key technical nuance here, the kind of detail you need an expert for. Rick called in a paleontologist, Andre Lugin.
Okay.
Lugin confirmed it was genuine. Then he noted 2 really important things. First, mastodons are generally rarer finds than mammoths. We find more mammoths.
Got it.
Second, he zeroed in on the location, Point Barrow, Alaska. Lugin stated he had never seen a mastodon tusk come from Point Barrow before.
Really? Never?
Never. He emphasized that point. So it's about the rarity within the known geographical distribution.
Okay, I think I get it. So mammoths were up there in Alaska on the
Yeah.
tundra.
Right, they thrived there. But mastodons, they were generally forest dwellers, browsers. They preferred warmer climates, usually found further south.
So finding one that far north is super rare.
Extremely rare. It suggests maybe a specific, previously undocumented migration pattern, or maybe even a subspecies adapted to the cold, something scientifically significant.
Which bumps up the value.
Significantly, both scientifically and therefore on the market. And the estimated age was just staggering. Lujan said, tens of thousands to a few 100,000 years old.
Wow. Okay, so what was the expert's value on this super rare, super old tusk piece?
Lujan estimated it at $2,500.
And the seller, Robert, what was he asking?
He was asking $2,000, which was, already below the expert's valuation.
So it seemed like an easy deal then.
You'd think. But this is where we see Rick's classic negotiation strategy kick in.
Right.
Never pay the full expert price, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how validated it is.
Right, protect the margin.
Exactly. Rick immediately opened low, $1,400.
Oof.
He leveraged the fact that, yeah, it's rare, but the tusk was cut into pieces.
Yeah.
And it's a specialized market, right? Not everyone's buying mastodon
It's
tusks.
true. Limited buyers.
So after some back and forth, the classic pawn shop haggle,
Yeah.
they compromised at $1,700.
$1,700.
Mm.
So he got it for $300 under the asking price and a full $800 under the expert's estimated high value.
Yep. He bought a potentially 100,000-year-old fossil fragment and instantly created an $800 margin just by applying pressure and exploiting the seller's likely need to sell and the item's condition.
That's a masterclass in risk management negotiation right there.
There it is. Okay, so now let's transition again. We're going from deep time fossils to perhaps the highest stakes authentication challenge there is.
What's it?
Artifacts that are thousands of years old and carry potential geopolitical risk. Ancient Egyptian relics.
Ah, okay. This is where things get really tricky, right?
Mm-hmm.
The difference between a genuine artifact and, like, an elaborate souvenir can mean tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Precisely. And authenticating these pieces, it requires understanding not just history, but geology, material science, religious iconography. It's a real crucible for the show's format, testing the experts like nothing else.
Okay, where do we start in Egypt?
Let's begin with a really high-value item, the royal cartonnage mummy mask.
Cartonnage mummy mask. Okay.
The artifact itself was a mask, or maybe more like a cover, believed to be from the 2nd century AD, and likely belonging to someone very high class, maybe even royal.
Okay, just to pause there.
Yeah.
For you listening, what exactly is cartonnage? Is that like cardboard?
Huh, not quite cardboard, but closer to that than solid gold, like, King Tut's famous mask.
Right.
Cartonnage is a material made from layers of linen, or sometimes papyrus, stiffened up with plaster or glue. It's molded over the deceased person's face and torso, and then it's brightly painted or gilded.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's like a lighter, maybe more intricate alternative to a wooden sarcophagus mask.
Exactly. And you often see it indicating wealth, especially in the later Roman period of Egyptian history.
Got it. So this seller comes in with this potentially royal cartonnage mask, asks for how much?
Came in hot, asking price, $70,000.
Whoa.
He was hoping to use the funds to buy another piece for his private collection, apparently. His absolute rock-bottom floor, he said, was $30,000.
Big range. So Corey was handling this one. He brought in an expert.
Yeah, Corey brought in expert Phineas for the assessment.
And Phineas stuff.
Phineas confirmed it was real, and he noted it was in, quote, impeccable condition.
Okay, that's promising.
He was particularly struck by the detailed painting and the unusual color scheme. It went beyond just standard gilding. He pointed to specific iconography. There was a depiction of Isis, the goddess of reincarnation, and the deceased person was shown riding a lion.
Riding a lion. What does that signify?
That's key. Phineas noted that riding a lion would only be associated with royalty, or maybe a very high-ranking religious official, possibly a priestess of Isis.
Wow.
And the figure was even wearing the specific pharaonic crown of Upper Egypt. So lots of indicators pointing towards high status.
So all that detailed religious and royal symbolism, that pushed the valuation up.
You'd assume so. Based on the condition, the royal status implied by the art, the expert Phineas valued it at $20,000 to $22,500.
Wait, only $20,000 to $22,500? After all that, the seller wanted $70,000, minimum $30,000.
Exactly. Huge gap. The seller, having set his financial goal in his mind, was absolutely unwavering at his $30,000 floor.
So Corey must have tried to negotiate up from the expert's range.
Oh, yeah. Corey offered $20,000, then $21,000, then pushed it to $22,000, tried to meet him close to the expert high end.
But the seller wouldn't budge from 30K.
Not an inch. He was ready to walk. Insisted on $30,000. And here's where, the high-stakes psychology really kicked in. Corey. Well, in a move that clearly went against strict retail advice, maybe even the expert's implicit advice, he conceded. He paid the full $30,000.
You paid $30,000. That's like $7,500 more than the expert's maximum valuation.
Yep. A significant overpay based on the appraisal. Corey justified it on the show by saying he thought the piece was just so visually stunning it would, quote, really up the pawn shop's art game.
Okay, that raises a really critical question, doesn't it? Isn't paying, $7,500 over an objective appraisal just fundamentally bad business?
From a pure buy low, sell high perspective, yes, absolutely.
So what's the play? Is Corey genuinely banking on some future appreciation, or is he basically using that purchase as a marketing cost? Like buying a high-end, rare showpiece to draw attention and build the shop's image?
I think it's almost certainly the latter. It's a marketing cost and a calculated risk. For a business that now thrives on a constant flow of tourists coming in because of the TV show.
Right.
Having an unquestionably real, high-value, aesthetically stunning Egyptian artifact in the display case, that might be worth more than its immediate resale margin.
The wow factor for the tourists.
Exactly. Corey essentially paid a premium for prestige, for the visual appeal of his inventory. It demonstrates that sometimes, on a global television platform like this, the perceived value and the marketing value can trump the objective appraisal. It was a calculated psychological gamble on future prestige and foot traffic.
A gamble that cost him $7,500 up front, though. Okay, let's move to a much smaller item now, but one with an equally tricky authentication story. The scarab ring.
Ah, yes, the scarab. So a seller brings in this ring, claims it's from the 18th dynasty, so we're talking way back, around 1500 BC.
Okay.
And he backs this up with a little card, apparently from an Egyptian seller, guaranteeing that dynasty.
Right. Context here is important. You mentioned earlier, scarabs, dung beetles, were hugely symbolic for Egyptians, right?
Immensely so.
Yeah.
They symbolized eternal life, resurrection. You see them everywhere in Egyptian art, on jewelry, painted on mummies, even as huge sculptures at temple entrances. They were ubiquitous.
So Phineas, the expert, comes in again for this.
Yes. And Phineas confirms, okay, the scarab itself, the little beetle carving, it appears genuine, looks to be about 3,000 years old.
Okay, so that sounds like a massive win for the seller, right? He's got the card, he's got the expert saying the main part is ancient.
It should be. But this is where the nuance of material science comes right into play. Phineas didn't just look at the scarab, he looked very closely at the gold setting.
The rim part, holding the scarab.
Exactly. Using a magnifying glass, he analyzed how it was constructed. And specifically, he noted this characteristic ropework design in the gold bands surrounding the scarab.
Ropework, like twisted metal.
Yeah, like a thick, twisted metal design. And what did that ropework indicate?
Something not ancient, I'm guessing.
Bingo. Phineas explained that specific aesthetic style of gold construction. That's indicative of the turn of the century. Specifically, like 1900 to maybe 1905, 1910.
Wow. So the ancient 3,000-year-old scarab had been put into a much newer gold ring.
Correct. It had been repurposed, made in Egypt, almost certainly, but as a souvenir during that huge spike in Egyptian tourism and fascination that happened after the early archaeological discoveries of that era, the whole King Tut exhibit buzz, that sort of thing.
So it wasn't actually an 18th dynasty ring at all. It was an 18th dynasty scarab that got recontextualized into a 20th century souvenir piece.
That's the perfect word, recontextualized. And that distinction just completely collapsed the price.
Not badly.
The genuine age of the centerpiece, the scarab, it basically no longer mattered because the object as a whole was defined by its recent creation date and its tourist intent. Phineas estimated the value of the loose scarab at only about $250.
$250 for a 3,000-year-old artifact.
Yep. Plus, maybe another $200 for the scrap value of the gold setting. So, total, maybe $450 to $500 max.
Good grief. And the seller had asked for?
He'd optimistically asked for $15,000.
$15,000.
Based on the card and the age of the scarab itself. Rick, of course, now knowing the true value of the combined piece, he offered, basically non-negotiable, $350.
$350.
They settled eventually on $360.
Wow. That is just a phenomenal lesson. How a tiny detail like a bit of rope work on the metal setting can devalue a 3,000-year-old artifact by, over 97%?
Context, as we keep saying, is the ultimate arbiter of value in this game. It really is.
Okay, let's look at one more high-risk Egyptian piece. The mummified falcon.
Ah, the bird mummy, yes.
Mm.
This item was presented in its own little sarcophagus. These were used as religious offerings, typically to the god Horus, the falcon-headed god.
Right.
This one was believed to be from the Ptolemaic period, so roughly 2,500 to 2,600 years old. The seller's asking price was $15,000.
15 grand again. Okay, so who did they bring in for this? Not Phineas.
No, they brought in an archaeologist expert this time. He examined it, confirmed that the linen wrappings, the specific type of weave, the style of the little sarcophagus, it all looked consistent with the Ptolemaic period.
So likely genuine.
Likely genuine. He even noted the wrapping of the falcon mummy itself was unusually high quality, which suggested it was probably a pretty significant religious offering back in the day.
Okay, but I sense a but coming.
There's always a but with these things. He immediately raised several red flags. Crucial warnings.
Like what?
Two main things. First, he cautioned that high-quality reproductions of these sorts of things, made specifically for the tourist industry, have been really common since the 19th century. So authentication without doing, destructive testing can be difficult. Fakers got good.
Right. The souvenir problem again.
Exactly. Second, he noted that the sarcophagus itself was unusually larger than the mummy inside.
Why is that weird?
Well, normally, for an original artifact like this, the container and the contents were meant to match perfectly. They were created as a set. The size discrepancy suggests that maybe the two pieces, the mummy and the sarcophagus, might have been paired up much later, maybe by a dealer somewhere along the line.
Marrying pieces, which diminishes the integrity of the whole ensemble.
Correct. So, taking all that into account, genuine period style but potential reproduction risk, and the mismatched size, the expert valued the set at $10,000 to $12,000.
Okay, $10,000 to $12,000. Still decent. So Rick must have offered the low end, maybe $10.
Nope. He didn't even offer the expert's low price. Rick offered $8,000.
8? Why so cautious, even with a pretty strong authentication?
Paperwork, or the lack thereof. Rick cited the missing provenance paperwork and the inherent resale risk.
Explain that risk part more. If the expert says it's likely real.
Because Rick, as the buyer, has to bear the full burden of resale, right? He's not a collector. He's looking for a relatively quick, profitable turn. With items that have this kind of historical gravity and potential legal complications around antiquities.
Yeah.
If the paperwork is missing, if the provenance is weak, the item becomes far riskier to sell on to a serious buyer, like a major museum or a high-end collector. They demand documentation.
So he needs a bigger potential profit margin to compensate for the extra time, the hassle, the potential difficulty of actually moving the piece.
Exactly. The risk of just having that inventory sit there, tying up capital, reduces its immediate cash value to him dramatically.
Makes sense. So the seller, what did they say to $8,000?
The seller wasn't having it. He countered with the expert's absolute upper limit, $12,000. And when Rick wouldn't go higher, the seller walked away, believed the item was worth more, or maybe just couldn't stomach the lower offer.
So another failed deal. This time predicated entirely on the inherent risks of dealing in ancient artifacts without ironclad papers.
It's the ultimate lesson in inventory management for this kind of stuff. Authentication is only really useful if it translates directly into liquid profit without too much headache.
Which brings us, I think, to our final Egyptian item example. And this one is the definitive cautionary tale, isn't it? The garage sale fake.
Oh, yeah. This is the dream versus reality check. A seller comes in with this piece of Egyptian-style stonework, claims it's 4th dynasty BC.
That's Old Kingdom, like Pyramids era.
Right. Super ancient. Acquired it, supposedly, at a garage sale. And his hope, a staggering $25,000.
25 grand for a garage sale find. Okay.
This piece really shows how simple, practical tests often trump historical hope or wishful thinking. Corey called an expert Bob Dodge for this one.
And Dodge's method wasn't about iconography or anything.
Nope. He immediately focused on the surface texture, not the design carved into it.
Texture, how does that help?
He explained it very clearly. Any piece of stonework that's genuinely been buried in the desert for, say, 3,000 years, it undergoes constant microscopic friction. From the earth, the wind, the sand, it creates a natural, subtle sheen or smoothness, sometimes called desert varnish.
Okay, like a natural polishing process over millennia.
Exactly. So Dodge just ran his fingernail across the surface of this piece, and what did he feel?
Let me guess.
Rough.
Rough, like sandpaper, he said. That immediately indicated a recent carving, no sign of those thousands of years of environmental polishing.
Wow. Simple but effective. Anything else?
Yeah, just to be sure, he also pointed out that the style of the headdress depicted on the figure wasn't actually one used in ancient Egypt, so the iconography was wrong too.
So the verdict.
Brutal.
Yeah.
A modern carved piece, probably made for decoration or maybe, as dogs put it, like a high school art project.
Ouch. And the value. Instead of $25,000?
Maybe $20. For the frame,
Yeah.
if you took the stone out. $20.
Hmm.
A shocking reminder that sometimes that amazing historical hunch you get at a garage sale,
Yeah.
it really is just wishful thinking.
Happens all the time. Hope springs eternal, but reality bites.
Okay, this all raises a really important question, and it pulls us away from ancient history for a bit. We've established that knowledge, authentication, expertise, these are the critical keys to establishing financial value for these items.
Right.
But what happens when human ego, or just raw competitive spirit, takes center stage? When the artifact itself almost becomes secondary to the wager or the contest?
Now we shift gears. We're moving into the realm of interpersonal risk, where the negotiation isn't about historical facts anymore. It becomes a contest of wills, of pride.
And this is perfectly exemplified by the punching contest episode, isn't it?
Absolutely perfectly.
The item wasn't ancient history. It was a piece of classic arcade Americana, a 1981 Zamperla KO punching game. You know, the kind you punch the bag on to test your strength.
Right. Fun piece. It was operational, but it was missing some key aesthetic bits. The top marquee sign, the bell that's supposed to ring, stuff like that.
And the seller was asking $1,000 for it.
Yep. The initial negotiation was pretty standard pawn shop stuff. Corey was handling it. He started low, offered $600.
Okay.
Seller held firm. Corey raised it to $650. Seller countered, came down just a bit to $700.
So they were only $50 apart. $650 versus $700. It's like they could have split the difference.
Normally, yeah. But that $50 gap, it became this highly competitive, very public wager. And apparently, it was Chum Lee's idea.
What was the wager?
Exactly simple and perfect for TV. Corey and the guest would each punch the machine. Whoever scored higher won the price point. If the guest won, he got his full asking price, $700. If Corey won, he got the machine for his lower offer, $650.
Okay, this is pure reality TV theater, obviously. But the financial consequences, though small, were real. $50 was on the line based on punching power.
Right. The guest went first. And he actually used technique. He seemed to understand that those machines measure power best if you hit the bag at just the right angle.
Okay, smart. His score.
He scored a respectable 170.
All right. Then Corey steps up.
Corey steps up, and he relies purely on brute force, maybe a little bit of ego in there too. Winds up, lands a strong blow,
Yep.
only scored a 150.
Lost by 20 points.
Lost the contest, which meant he had to pay the higher price, the $700 the seller wanted.
Huh. Lost $50 because he couldn't outpunch the customer. But what's fascinating, you mentioned, is the follow-up detail.
Yeah, this is what reveals something deeper. Corey was apparently so frustrated by losing, even though it's just a $50 difference, that later the cameras caught him in the storage area practicing his technique on that same punching machine, trying to figure out how to hit it better.
That's telling, isn't it? It highlights that really deeply competitive nature you probably need to survive, let alone thrive, in a high-stakes retail environment like a pawn shop. Even tiny losses sting.
Absolutely. That minor financial loss, it reveals a core personality trait. That intense drive to win, almost regardless of the stakes. You can't stand losing, even by a little.
And speaking of personality and high stakes, we really have to address the significant personal transformations and also the legal realities that the cast members faced outside the pawn counter. These are arguably far higher stakes situations than any antique they might buy or sell.
Oh, definitely. Life stakes, not just financial ones.
Let's start with Corey Harrison. His physical transformation was just incredible to watch over the years. Our sources confirm he was up around 402 pounds at his heaviest.
Yeah, massive weight. And the motivation for change, according to reports, came after his doctor put him on preventative medication for prediabetes. That was the wake-up call.
Right, so what did he do?
That was the turning point. He opted for lap band surgery, and the results were astounding. He lost 192 pounds.
Only 92 pounds.
Dropped all the way down to 210 pounds. And this dramatic transformation, it wasn't just, aesthetic. It genuinely allowed him to reclaim his life in many ways.
How so?
He was able to return to activities he loved but couldn't physically manage when he was younger and heavier. Things like snowboarding, boxing, activities that require a certain level of fitness he just didn't have before.
That's fantastic for him personally. But despite his long tenure on the show, being there from the start, Corey has made it very clear recently that he has no intention of returning if the show tries to revive itself, say as a Pawn Stars 2.0 or something.
Right. And his reasoning is actually quite insightful. It connects back, in a way, to that idea of authenticity we were discussing with the artifacts.
How?
He basically said, at this stage of the game, we're all playing a character. I can't play another season of 41-year-old me pretending to be 23.
Ah, so he's acknowledging the performance aspect of reality TV.
Explicitly. He recognized that the fundamental nature of reality TV, especially long-running shows, involves a degree of performance, playing a version of yourself. And he felt he was just done with that performance, ready to move on.
Where did he move on to?
He has since relocated, apparently, moved down to Tulum, Mexico, focusing on his future outside the relentless demands and the sort of curated reality of television.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Okay, then there's Austin Chumley Russell. His legal troubles back in 2016 were really dramatic and, frankly, life-altering. It all stems from a sexual assault investigation, right? Though it's important to note he was ultimately not charged with the sex crime itself.
Correct. That initial investigation, though, it led the police to search his Las Vegas home. And what they found during that search created a massive, separate legal predicament for him.
What did they find?
A lot. He ended up facing 19 separate drug possession charges, things like methamphetamine, Xanax, marijuana, and also one felony weapon charge.
Felony weapon charge for what?
For several unregistered assault-style rifles they found, specifically reports mentioned an MP5 and some .223 caliber rifles. Unregistered.
Wow. Okay, 19 drug charges and a felony weapon charge. The potential penalties must have been astronomical.
Absolutely terrifying. Our sources indicate that if he had been convicted on all those counts, Chumley was potentially facing something like 70 years in state prison.
70 years?
Yeah. And this brings us right back to that theme of the critical importance of expert advice. Not historical experts this time, but legal experts.
Absolutely. This case becomes a profound demonstration of the value of having skilled legal representation when you're facing that kind of jeopardy.
It really does. Chumley's criminal defense lawyer, clearly an expert in navigating these complex situations, advised him on a specific strategy. Instead of risking a trial on that whole huge slate of charges,
Yeah.
he was advised to plead guilty to just two things: the felony weapon charge and one of the drug charges reduced to a gross misdemeanor.
Okay, a plea deal. And what was the result of taking that deal? Instead of 70 years,
The result was counseling and 3 years of probation.
probation, not prison.
Right. And crucially, the agreement stipulated that if his record stayed completely clean through the end of his probation in 2019, that felony charge, the really serious one that carries long-term consequences, it would be dismissed, cleared from his record.
Which is huge for future employment, rights, everything.
Massive. That is the ultimate example of a high-stakes wager paying off, but only because it was guided by exigent legal strategy. The difference between potentially 70 years in prison and ending up with 3 years probation, counseling, and ultimately a cleared felony, it's almost immeasurable.
It really shows the critical function of expert legal counsel in navigating the complexities of the justice system. It perfectly parallels, in a way, how the Harrisons rely on their historical experts to navigate the complexities of the antiquities market.
That's a great parallel. Both situations are about mitigating extreme, potentially life-altering risk through very specialized knowledge, whether it's avoiding buying a fake artifact or avoiding decades in prison.
Yeah. It makes you realize that the financial gambles they take on, a mastodon tusk or an overpriced mummy mask, they almost pale in comparison to the personal and legal risks the cast members faced in their actual lives. Risks that required totally different kinds of specialized experts to help them secure their futures.
Absolutely. So if we try to connect all these threads, pull it all together into a bigger picture, the unifying theme that keeps emerging is the critical role of expertise and also the extreme volatility of perceived value.
Yeah. We've seen again and again that true value in this pawn world, it's rarely straightforward, is it? It depends not just on an item's obvious historical weight, the age of the mastodon tusk, the connection to Marquis de Lafayette.
Right. But also just as much on the depth and the specificity of the expert analysis brought to bear on it.
Exactly. Like the difference between that $30,000 cartonnage mask and the $360 scarab ring.
Yeah.
Fundamentally, that difference came down purely to context, as determined by the expert.
One was authenticated as a likely royal artifact, and Corey chose to pay a premium for its prestige value. The other was an equally ancient scarab, but the expert identified it as having been recontextualized into a 1900s tourist souvenir, which just decimated its market worth.
The experts were the ones who could distinguish between a genuine antique and an antique souvenir. That's a subtle but crucial difference.
Hugely crucial. And we also saw the psychological elements of negotiation playing out constantly. Corey losing $7,500 on the mummy mask because he prioritized marketing prestige over the immediate margin.
Right. Contrasted with Rick successfully negotiating that mastodon tusk down $800 below the expert's value
Yeah.
simply by leveraging the condition and the inherent resale risks associated with that kind of specialty inventory.
Two different approaches, driven by different priorities and personalities.
And the Pawn Stars show itself, the TV show, it absolutely relies on that expert authentication process. That provides the historical backbone, the interesting facts that make the content compelling and educational, sort of.
It does. That's the hook.
But the true business of the shop running alongside the show, and certainly the personal lives of the stars, they often involve these incredibly high-risk, high-reward gambles, whether it's the financial risk of Corey's $30,000 overpay or the deeply personal, life-altering risk of Chumley's legal jeopardy.
In all those cases, specialized expertise, whether historical, business, or legal, becomes the only truly reliable currency. It's how you navigate the risk.
Which brings us, I think, to our final provocative thought for you, the listener, to mull over.
Okay.
Considering the immense, undeniable global success of this Pawn Stars format, I mean, it spawned numerous spin-offs like American Restoration, Counting Cars, international versions like Pawn Stars UK.
Right, it became a whole genre.
How has this genre, which so effectively blends accessible, factual, historical content with that interpersonal retail drama, how has it permanently altered the way the general public views both history education and small business retail?
That's a big question. Has it made history, more accessible, more palatable maybe, because it's wrapped up in the entertainment of a haggle? Has it sort of democratized historical knowledge in a way?
Or has this format inadvertently given the average viewer a dangerously inflated sense of what their own grandmother's garage sale finds are actually worth? Creating more of those $25,000 expectations for what turns out to be a $20 high school art project.
That's the tension, isn't it? The core challenge, maybe, of blending information and entertainment so successfully in the age of reality television. Where does education end and entertainment, or even misinformation about value, begin?
Something for you to think about. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive.
We'll see you next time.